women cannot live in the present, trying the best to understand the past. We ain't even got hope trying to control the future.
We are back again, BCL Media, Carlisle Bay. Beautiful day in Barbados. There's a lot of movement in the economy. There's a lot of movement in the tourism sector. There's a lot of movement globally of what's going on. Right now we have Kemar Stuart with us, leader of the new National Party, NNP, author of Alternate Views. We just want to get a temperature check from him, seeing what's going on today. Kemar Stuart, how you doing, sir?
Yeah, good afternoon, Black Champion Lifestyles. Pleasure to be here with you this evening here at Carlisle Bay, better known as Browns Beach. One of the most beautiful beaches in the Caribbean and the dare say the world. Happening today in Barbados is the 1st of October, so that represents the freedom of movement and the signature of that arrangement, a more modern arrangement between 4 Caribbean countries. So those 4 Caribbean countries will be Barbados, Dominica, St. Vincent, and Belize. So, those persons coming in from these respective countries would have been getting specific benefits, much like how a regular Barbadian would get those benefits, that they could stay indefinitely to live and to work, without hassles. What's interesting about that, though, is that all of these persons participating in that program will have to accept the digital ID as their form of identification if they're interested in participating in the Barbados economy.
Okay. So, what do you think are the pros and cons of what you just mentioned?
Well, immigration is okay to an extent. However, there's something called overrun. So you can observe overrun happening in Europe. President of the United States, Donald Trump, spoke about how, over migration can ruin economies and societies based off how our setup, our financial system is set up. There are disparities in terms of currencies and parity and power. Right? So labor markets go for different values. So what is happening right now is that the African region and some of the more Indian region, they are doing migration into economies that Europe are working for wages that are not near what you would have to pay the regular European. Right? And we're seeing it happening in the Caribbean, where you have that currency disparity happening. Really, Barbados is 2-1, Jamaica is 100 and some to 1, and that is a couple of dollars to 1, I think. 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not sure the exact value, but the point is migration happens constantly. What we want is a more managed migration system that not any and everybody could come in, which would then later lead to remittances out of the country, so it will not benefit us in the long term.
Okay, understood. Okay, we had some conversations with some of the citizens in the town, in Bridgetown. We heard mixed reviews. Most people is thinking that it's about time that it happened. More unity, more openness. Some are saying that there are jobs that are being opened that those will be doing. They wouldn't be taking our jobs. Now, what do you say to the Bajan people in terms of, okay, this is happening. What can they do to mitigate, guard themselves? What can they do in this moment and space to somehow relieve themselves? Because we say it starts from self, right? It got to start from what you're doing. We got to hold our leaders accountable, but at any day, there's some stuff that we could do on our own. Is there anything that can do, or is it purely a top-down type of situation?
Well, when these decisions are made, obviously, they are not made with reference to the public. Decisions are made within the silo of leadership at cabinet level, and they are at the regional level in terms of regional prime ministers meeting and having discussions. And then there's also the CARICOM Secretariat, right? So these decisions will obviously be made with economic research, political research, legal research, which would lead to the informed decision that you need to have open borders to achieve migration, because one, the population may not be high enough. You might be, overdue in payments to the IMF, etc., so you need a bigger tax base, so you need to have migration in. Also, the political factor where voter turnout is very low, and you need to import a vote to be able to boost up the voters list to achieve electoral success. So there are a couple of factors going into it. Now, Barbados is a country where Barbados is hard for Barbadians already, right? So the healthcare system is not to the best standard that it could be. The transportation system is not to the standard. We have a serious housing problem in Barbados, especially in the Semoico area. That's not to speak for the problems in the rural areas as it relates to housing. And there's a shortage happening in the country. So essentially, where are you going to put excess persons coming into the country competing for almost the same opportunities, but for a much cheaper wage with the local? Now, from the private sector perspective, economic sense would say, well, you would employ the migrant. But from a patriotic perspective, you would try to employ the Barbadian, and give that type of leverage. But economically, it will not make sense if we allow excess migration, where this competitive nature of the labor market, so essentially price out Barbadians, where most economic literature says that we basically operate for a high wage. Right? So the high wage constraint for any business is a challenge, and cheap labor is essentially the recommendation being put to us. But from a societal perspective, we need to weigh how far we're willing to go with it.